Okay, good.
Great to see you. My name's Evan. I've been
Hi,
chatting
Evan.
with friends with Josh Agajanian. I think we met briefly at the Phases of the Moon Festival.
All
Yeah,
right. Oh, of course, I remember it clearly. You were in
yeah.
a dress, weren't you?
Yeah, I just got off. I got off the further bus. That's the
Ah,
end of the line for me.
right. Well, this shit happens. No,
Yeah, and
man.
I'm Shad,
Hi,
huge
buddy.
fan.
Hi. Good.
Glad to talk with you this evening.
Right. Shit T-shirt, man. Fuck. What's that?
Yeah, man, it was a gift.
You're in
It's some
death cult or what?
yeah, it's a death metal band, I think.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah, some heavy metal occult.
It's
Yeah,
12. It's 12 noon on Saturday here, and unbelievably, it's raining. Well, no, actually, it's not raining anymore. It's been raining all night and all morning, which for us is quite unusual.
Man, we haven't had rain in a while. I really enjoyed your segment with the David Lemieux, or however you pronounce it, Lemieux, on the Shakedown stream. That was a nice little bit there, and hopefully we're not, I don't want to be redundant, because I feel like we've all heard that and it's fresh on our minds. But
we'll try to be original.
Yeah,
and not
yeah.
repeat ourselves, but all the girls say I'm a great repeater. So,
well, there's bigger things to worry about than repeating these awesome stories you've got in your head.
All right. So when do we
man.
start? Have I got time to have a sleep, or do we start now?
You have time. Yeah, whatever. Yeah, whenever you want. We're gonna start in a few minutes, but if you want to have a smoke or something beforehand.
Smoke? I've had lung cancer. What are you talking about?
Oh shit! Well, yeah, sorry.
I haven't smoked. No, it's all right, man. I haven't smoked for 7 years now.
Yeah, I quit smoking too. It was a bad scene. My dad had throat cancer, so I was like, well, that's probably good. Omen.
Yeah, no, I stopped it, and I feel. Yeah, well, I'm alive. You know what I mean? So.
Yeah, I think I've been watching too many of these old '70s documentaries and seeing you smoking, so it's probably what was in my head.
I used to smoke like a chimney. I smoked since I was 9 years old, man.
Wow. Yeah, getting started early.
My grandmother got me into it.
Wow.
When I write my true confessions, Grandma introduced me to drugs.
How dare you, Grandma?
The headline, yeah. Bless her.
Hey, so just to chime in here, this is very informal as far as we can start. We've already started. We're gonna edit this thing, so it's all good.
Right.
And I'm gonna probably drop my video off, so I'm just seeing the two of you guys conversing, but I'll still be here.
All right, bub. No problem.
All right. Well, Sam, thanks for joining us. Really excited to talk to you. I've heard you on bootlegs for many years. We have a Dead tribute here in Austin, Texas, called Deadeye, and we're all Jerry Garcia fanatics. And this is going to be on air on Jerry's birthday. So I was hoping we could, spend some time waxing poetic and worshiping at the altar of Jerome Garcia.
Okay, I don't know about the worshiping at the altar, but no, listen.
Sure.
I love Jerry, and he was an amazing man, amazing musician, and it was. It all sounds corny to say, "Oh, it was a privilege to work for him." It would have been even more of a privilege if he'd paid me better, but that's all right. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Everybody I worked for in the music business seemed to have underpaid me upon reflection, but pay is a funny concept, of course. It's not. You don't just get paid in money.
Sure, as an experience.
You get paid in scars. I've got a few of them. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
You get paid in love and affection, and certainly with the Grateful Dead, becoming a member of something that's a bit larger than yourself, or even all the other individual members of the band, even including Jerry. You joined. What would you call it? A cult, a movement, a generation in terms of its kind of aspirations and its developing the way to behave in the world and to get by, its own survival techniques. Because I think we should remember, of course, that the Grateful Dead itself, the thing of making a band, was in a sense a survival technique for Garcia and Hunter and Pigpen and all kinds of people that were loosely associated with them that you could call the family. Everybody wanted to get by. People weren't really involved with let's get famous and rich. People were more involved with how do we survive? What are we going to do that's going to be fun and, not like some kind of version of being in the military. So they came up with what we now know of as the Grateful Dead, and it was a pretty hip solution to the survival problem. And so for me, it was wonderful to be a part of it, to witness it, be involved, to, as it were, see it all from the inside out. It was amazing, man.
Yeah, well, you're a huge part of what, like we all inherited this world of rock and roll. Y'all very much create it. And, I just want to thank you for all your hard work and laying the groundwork there. It's funny you bring up the military because you just posted this thing on Facebook about from one of Jerry's sergeants in the Army about how cantankerous he was and how impossible to work with he was.
Well, Jerry stole his mum's car. It's a little known fact about Jerry. He was a naughty younger boy. He was a bit out of control. And he stole it. I think she told him, stole it. I think she told him he couldn't use it. And he had a kind of fuck you moment and borrowed it and went off in it with his friends, got stopped by the cops, and she pressed charges. So he went to court, and the court gave him an option. Either you join the military or you go to jail. Not that that's much of a fucking option. So he went to the military.
Wow.
Yeah. And,
so didn't Jimmy also do some time in the military?
Yeah, but Jimi Hendrix was a bit different. Jimi Hendrix was in the 108th Airborne, he was a paratrooper.
Yeah.
For him, it was a matter of kind of pride and all that, But
yeah.
Jerry was like
punishment.
It was the ultimate resentment. He hated it. He didn't want to be there. You know what I mean? And he, of course, he deliberately decided to be the world's worst soldier, just as a matter of self-preservation.
Yeah,
and you can imagine.
Yeah, no, I can imagine. Yeah, my father's a soldier. He seems a diametric opposite of Jerry Garcia. It's I know the type that succeeds in the military, and it doesn't seem like the hippies and the pranksters were ideal.
Well,
it's
funny. It's funny you should say that. You see, I know plenty of people, who became hippies, who were pretty serious in the fucking military. Ken Babbs, for example, in the Pranksters, he was, I think, a major.
Really?
In the Marine Corps, and he was a helicopter pilot in Vietnam.
I did not know that.
Yeah, and he saw plenty of action, man. You know what I mean?
Wow.
But he became a hippie after the military. Garcia was a bit of a hippie before the military.
Right.
Well, he was a proto-hippie. Hippies didn't exist. He was in that kind of no man's land that I found myself in, somewhere between the beats and the hippies.
Right. And you're kind of more like I picture you getting along with John Barlow, kind of like the libertarian hippie.
Well, Barlow and I had our differences, to tell the truth. We at one stage, man, we really fell out. I told him, I wouldn't piss on him if he was on fire.
Oh, shit.
Not one of my more friendly phrases, but we eventually got there in the end, you know what I mean? Because, of course, in the end, what unites people is what you love. And see, a great range of different types of people love the Grateful Dead. So, if you all love the Grateful Dead, in the end, you kind of have to love one another, don't you? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Even if that other guy might be, I'm astounded, for example, from the distance of Australia, an Englishman that's lived in America that's become an Australian citizen, you know what I mean? I'm astounded at the number of what I would call extreme right-wing Trump supporters who are deadheads.
Wow. Yeah, like Ann Coulter.
Yeah, just kind of floors me. You know what I mean?
Me too.
But there we are. You know, I mean, it just goes to show what a broad church the Grateful Dead's music has become.
Yeah, it takes all kinds. To start, like, I just want to make sure I understand the 30-second bio on you. You were the tour manager in the U.S. for the Rolling Stones, which kind of ended at Altamont. Yeah, your engagement with them, right? That was kind of a messy.
Well, they went back to Europe, and I stayed to clear up the mess.
Ah, right. And then that somehow led to a stint as tour manager of the Dead from 70 to 74.
Yeah, well, what happened was, so people understand, right? Immediately the Altamont was happening, right? What also was happening was that Lenny Hart, Mickey, the drummer's father, the Reverend Lenny Hart, a very upstanding Christian gentleman, a reverend no less, ran off with $350,000 of the band's money, and the 24-year-old silly little girl from the local bank that dealt with the accounts, and they both ran away as far as they could, which was to a seedy motel on the beach in San Diego. Something of a lack of imagination.
And what was his role in the band, Lenny?
He was the manager.
The tour manager?
The manager.
Manager, just general manager, GM. Because I'm confused about the different manager roles, because I read about John McEntire, David Parker, Rock Scully, Danny Rifkin. Like, how does this management structure work where,
Well, the thing is that after Lenny Hart ran off with the money, I lived with Jerry at his house, and I was staying with him, and we had long talks about how the Rolling Stones organized their business affairs, and how the Grateful Dead should do it. So Jerry, who, was very good when it came to music, wasn't quite so good at when it came to organizing bands. Jerry decided that he'd have 3 managers for the Grateful Dead instead of 1, and that, having 3, they could all, keep an eye on one another, as it were.
A council of elders.
Dealt with the money, I did with the tours, and John McEntire dealt with the bullshit. And then there was Alan, McEntire was this kind of titular head. I don't know how to describe McEntire. I mean, man, he was a lovely guy.
Yeah.
He was a good-looking boy, lovely guy. It's hard to say, man. In those days, I just got on with making the band money. 95% of the band's income came through my telephone, because the only way the band could make any money was by doing live gigs. They didn't sell any records.
Right. Yeah, and they wasted a lot of money in the studio doing experiments like Ax Moxoa and Anthem of the Sun.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But it was all great fun, and it's only money.
Yeah, and they were great at generating money. Hey, you're kind of credited for getting them to work. I mean, you kind of were like milking that cow. Like, you figured out the college circuit that a lot of other bands took advantage of, right?
Well, man, when I joined the Grateful Dead, right, it was as a result of having long conversations with Jerry and a couple of months of looking at them, before joining them. And it's like, I mean, I had a very low opinion of them in terms of like their organization. I thought it was all great and all lovely and everything, but you know what I mean? It was like a kind of dysfunctional Indian tribe. You know what I mean? People were, just a mess, man. It wasn't organized at all. The very word organized for the Grateful Dead in those days kind of represented some Hitlerite vision, they were all, organization that smacked of the military and the police and
the man
at school, and you know what I mean, and a job. My God, nobody wanted any of that. So there's considerable resistance, So when I first actually met the Grateful Dead was before Altamont, when we were talking about this putative free show the Grateful Dead wanted to do with the Rolling Stones, and wouldn't this be wonderful? And it was in Mickey Hart's barn out in Nevada at a ranch he had then. And there must have been, about 80 people at this meeting. I couldn't work out who the fuck everybody was. I mean, I could recognize some of them. Some of them were old ladies. Some of them were musicians. There were all kinds of people. Anyway, I used to say to Jerry, I said, well, look, if I'm going to, organize all the gigs and everything, I can't do meetings with 80 people, man. I work for a band, not for a fucking collective or whatever, what
community.
I mean? Or a community. Yeah, I mean, really, and the reality is that if we're going to, stay in one piece as a band, which of course they wanted to do, we have to earn a shitload of money, which means we're going to have to work really hard. And, we can't just sit around having meeting after meeting after meeting, which we did, So it just got ridiculous, and I was getting more and more fed up with it. And I remember very clearly the Grateful Dead had a little house, which was their business headquarters kind of thing in San Rafael in California. And we were sitting there, and it was going to be yet another meeting to discuss yet another forthcoming tour. And it was all just a pain in the ass. And there was all these people there, and I was looking at all these people. And, men and women and children and dogs and everybody, all crammed into this room, about 50 or 60 people. And I was looking around, and I see this guy sitting there. So I called the meeting to order, as it were, and I went, right, who is this guy? So everybody looked at him. Nobody knew who the fuck he was. It turned out he was a hippie that had walked into the office off the street, saw this meeting going on, thought, oh, this looks interesting, and I'll join in. So that was like the final straw.
Yeah.
So I blew my top and went, look, you know what I mean? I don't work for women, so I don't want to meet with the band's old ladies. That caused huge ructions.
Yeah.
Obviously. I was, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I got the Turd of the Month award. But eventually I managed to whittle it down to the band, right? So then we had and the equipment guys. So then there was a famous meeting with them, and they all went, oh, we don't want to sit, talking about gigs that we're going to do. No. I said, well, you've all got to join the union. That was a big one.
Oh.
The Musicians Union in San Francisco, right? And to be in the Musicians Union, that means you've got to sign Musicians Union contracts for your gigs. Contracts that are okayed by the Musicians Union. And to do that, you've got to have a leader of the band. Upon which point Garcia went, I'm not signing anything. No, I'm not the leader of the band.
Yeah. Reluctant leader.
Like a fucking coward, Jerry. Jerry could be strategically very cowardly when he wanted to be.
Yeah.
So then we had to have a big meeting about who was going to be designated the leader of the band. And I said, look, listen, you guys sort it out. I'm not going to be in the room while all this goes on. So I went outside, I don't know what I did, had a cup of tea, smoked a joint, hung around. And about 45 minutes later, I went back in, and they made a decision. It's going to be Phil.
Yeah, the cop.
Yeah, right. So later, at Jerry's house, I was like, well, how come Phil got, elected to be the leader of the band? Jerry goes, well, Phil's always the most difficult guy to persuade that anything is a good idea. So we figured if you could get it past Phil, we'd all just go, yeah, well, all right. If it's all right with Phil, it's all right with us. Perfect. So that was kind of the way that, major decisions were made in the Grateful Dead.
Well, and when were these meetings happening? In 69, 70?
This is 1970, early
70.
1970,
Yeah.
So a lot of, our decisions were kind of made by a strange kind of system of defaults.
But, and then you just set them out to play all these colleges. And I mean, that's, as far as.
Well, I was with them. I went to every fucking one of them. Yeah.
Sure. But I mean, it was your idea to kind of hit all these colleges, right?
Well, the thing about colleges is, that I felt was that, if you want to play Houston, Texas, right, what you should do is play a shitload of colleges all over Texas, because half the people in those colleges probably come from Houston. But they, like if you play in Austin, and you play university in Austin, University of Texas in Austin, obviously all the people that are at the University of Texas don't come from Austin. They come from all over Texas. So if you want to kind of infiltrate deadheads into Texas, you know, greater Texas, you go and play in Austin and you do some great gigs, and they, you know, in turn tell people back in San Antonio, Houston, and various other places, you know. So it's a good way of just of getting your message across, if you like, of who you are. I mean, it's also it was, you know, playing in municipal auditoriums for the Grateful Dead in the beginning of the 70s was a pain in the ass. Whereas you could play at colleges and nobody at the college was going, oh, well, you've got to finish at, you know, 11 o'clock on the button. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There was nobody really in charge. You were playing in some field house, you know, and that was the sports department, and the sports department was looking at all these fucking hippies and going, what's going on? You know what I mean? They just retreated to their offices and let it happen, you know, man. You know,
y'all were playing SMU and TCU, these Christian universities.
Yeah, man. Yeah, but it was great, you know, because people, you know, not, you know, only students, other people came. And then the Grateful Dead, you know, the Grateful Dead knew how to seduce people. Give them a 6-hour show, man.
Is that how long they went?
Oh, some of them were, yeah.
Because there was like an acoustic set, the new writer,
Yeah,
Here's of the Purple Sage.
Yeah, the new rider. So the whole thing could take 6-7 hours, man.
Beautiful.
People, you know, get stoned and have a wonderful time.
Yeah, like that's the whole, you know, kind of the peak of an acid trip could last 4 to 6 hours. So, you know, they're going to take you up and take you down.
We also did a thing, you see, where most major college radio stations had their own radio stations. Most college, listen to me, most college towns had, sorry to sound so incoherent, so most college towns had their own radio stations. So some of them, you know, in Philadelphia, in Pittsburgh, in Manhattan, man, you know, they potentially could reach millions of people. You know, they're broadcasting on FM right in the middle of town. So we decided doing live simulcasts of our shows through college stations, right? And the college stations are run by kids. You know, the kids all loved it, didn't they? You know, I mean, it was great. There wasn't the uptightness in colleges in that period. You know, it was a great movement, of course, against the Vietnam War. The Grateful Dead had played at Columbia during the student strike, and you know, the Grateful Dead were, without having to do anything, were obviously clearly on the side of students
and anti-war. I mean, their politics were
and their politics were progressive, but you know, libertarian with a small L.
Right.
And the Grateful Dead just wanted the people to have fun, have a good time, man. Don't hurt one another. Don't hurt anybody else. You don't need to go to Vietnam and kill people. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and leave us alone.
Yeah, very mellow and progressive position, and we're no threat to anyone. You know what I mean? We don't want to tear down any of your institutions. We just don't want to be bullied by you.
Yeah. How would Jerry have reacted to this whole COVID-19 pandemic? You think he would have been bummed out that he can't play music, or do you think he'd be happy that social distancing and he gets to be alone in his basement playing with his guitar?
Well, I think that what Jerry would have done, the Grateful Dead would have done, they would have immediately invented a method of playing where they could still reach their people. You know what I mean? I mean, if I was in America now, I would be organising some major fucking concert, you know, that was on TV and everyone paid, you know, $5 for 12 hours worth of music, you know, and you know, 12 million people paid $5 for a ticket. You know what I mean? That's what I'd be doing. So there's no reason why you can't still have music. It's just got to be presented in a different form, you know, so people don't get, you know, cross-infected by their fellow lovers of music. But I mean, I don't see any reason why music should stop. It's just got to change. But the Grateful Dead, you know, were part and parcel of a period in the music business where people were very flexible. People wanted to, you know, invent what was next. You know what I mean? They were curious about, what can we do here? Didn't want to do the same old shit, you know. Nobody wanted to be Elvis Presley all over again.
Yeah.
Or the Beatles. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
People wanted to, you know, do their own thing, to invent their own music. So it was a magic period in American music in the early 70s. It just didn't apply just to the Grateful Dead. This applied to the Allman Brothers, to the band, even Lynyrd Skynyrd and people like that, you know. People were curious about, you know, and this only happens in America. What does it mean to be an American? What does it mean to be an American musician? Even more, what is peculiarly and specially American music? Let's set out and find that and discover that and redefine it. And the Grateful Dead, of course, on top of that, were about let's you know, discover that music, redefine it, redeploy it, share it with people, but let's do it with the best possible quality sound that we can manage.
Yeah. Yeah, it reminds me of the Simon and Garfunkel, you know, they all come to look for America. You know, we're kind of, y'all were at the edge of, you know, what we knew, and we're inventing the next thing, you know. I agree. I think they would have evolved.
Yeah, I mean, America's unique in that respect, you know. No one walks out of their house in England and goes, I'm off to discover England. They'd lock you up, man. They go, this guy's fucking mad. Lock him up.
Yeah,
or,
that trip's over.
I'm off to find the real Australia. You know?
Yeah, I think some lady on a camel already tried that, and it was brutal. Man, speaking of the Dead evolving, like it just you were at the helm, leading these guys all over America during the most transformational time of the band was changing, the rock and roll was changing, America was changing. They went from like psychedelic, you know, Aoxomoxo, like Cosmic Charlies and Mountains of the Moon and New Potato Caboose and doing that rag, all these really difficult songs, to these simple little country songs and acoustic sets. And Jerry was playing a pedal steel. I mean, how did the audience react? I mean, you were there for that change. I mean, we all heard about when Dylan plugged in and just pissed everybody off. Was it a similar reaction?
I think people loved it, man. I think people loved it. I think that the counterculture of which the Grateful Dead, you know, of course, were supreme representatives, you know, that the counterculture generally was beginning to think about, well, you know, we're growing up now. You know what I mean? It had all begun in the mid-'60s, now in the beginning of the 70s, you know what I mean? People had taken quite a few trips and were starting to think, well, what am I going to do with my life? Where is it going? Who are we? What, you know, this was a general kind of inquiring thing going on. A lot of freaks had left the major cities and gone off, you know, to rural areas, Oregon, Washington State, up to British Columbia to escape, you know, the draft or whatever. You know, people were beginning to think in terms of, well, maybe we should get a bit of land together. We should, you know, become self-sufficient. There's a whole range of different inquiries going on, and musicians were, you know, part and parcel of that. They, you know, they were part of that excuse me, that community and that culture. So it was a very questioning time period, and you know, that was of course in and of itself made it interesting and fun to be involved. You know, I mean, we were young, and young people question things, and young people want to build alternatives. So it was a major exciting time to be around. You know, I loved it, and whilst all that was possible, it was great. And then there became a time at the end of my involvement with the Grateful Dead where it just became, you know, like they were only just going out and doing gigs again. So that was like, that wasn't, so what? You know, I made them a few million, so it didn't really appeal to me.
Yeah.
So I left.
Yeah, you popped in when they were writing my favorite albums, American Beauty, Working Man's Dead, and Bob Hunter and Jerry were living together, just cranking out these classics that have so much wisdom and depth. And you just don't hear music like that these days, you know?
No, well, I mean, if you're a manager or a tour manager, you know, and you work with bands, obviously part of the art is to work with the band when the band's, you know, at its creative peaks. That's when it's interesting. So I was very lucky, you know. I worked with
you nailed it. I mean, that was the peak. I mean, Phil Lesh says our greatest moments were 70 to 74, and you were there for all of that.
Yeah, well, I'm proud to say that I helped them come about, you know, like Watkins Glen. Well,
yeah, Festival Express.
Festival Express. Yeah, these were all things that I played a part in, that's for sure. And, you know, they were seminal events in the culture, which, of course, you know, at that time, when I had my kind of Alexander the Great consciousness going on, you know, that was what we wanted to do. You know what I mean? We wanted to fight the biggest battles and produce the biggest shows and the best shows and produce the best sound and do something that was, you know, absolutely memorable. You know, not just some gig somewhere. I mean, that was the thing about the Grateful Dead. And bands today should kind of realize this. It's not just another gig. Every gig should be a special, unique occasion that people will never forget.
Oh, yes.
And if it's not that, then you might as well fuck off and work for the post office.
Absolutely.
Government, you know.
So many bands just phoning it in, you know, just clocking hours. It's a shame.
Well, yeah. I mean, I haven't worked in the music business for many years. I mean, I've been a writer.
But your time in the music business is etched in stone. It'll be passed down the Mount Sinai's of the religion of rock and roll for the rest of humanity. So you did your time well. I mean, you're like Jordan or Mike Tyson. You got in, you got out, you revolutionized the whole scene. I mean,
well, you know,
it was style.
It was a pleasure. I mean, I always tell people, you know, I mean, I worked my bollocks off, man. We worked hard, but it wasn't a job. You know, if you love something, it no longer becomes a job, does it? So I never thought of it as a job. I thought of it as something that we did that to change the zeitgeist, you know, to change the way that America looked at things, to change the way that freaks looked at things, to celebrate who we were, you know, in a special way. And above all, perhaps, to do stuff that was really, genuinely memorable.
Well, I think you did that.
Out of the ordinary, you know?
Yeah, so you had connection to Austin, right?
Yeah, I built Maynard
You lived
Downs.
in Austin, right?
I built Maynard Downs, found the empty place, designed it and built it.
Wow. And that was you're racing quarter horses, correct?
Yeah, the whole idea behind Maynard Downs, right, was I had a partner and her brother, a woman who was my partner for 6 years.
Frances, is that her name?
Yeah, Frances, yeah, and her brother. We all fell out, which is why I departed. But anyway, and Billy died, her brother. It was all a mess. But anyway, the whole idea of Maynard Downs was to join Texas, if you like to call it this, country culture with music, so that it was a 3,000 seat rodeo arena. It was a quarter horse racetrack. It was a beautiful, beautiful barbecue area with a stage, so we could have music, we could have horse racing, and we could have rodeos. And in the center, the infield of the racetrack, we could do, you know, large rock and roll shows.
That's pretty progressive. I mean, people are doing that these days.
Yep, and the idea was it was to be filmed, and it was to do, you know, a TV series. So there we are. It got built, but basically the deal that I wanted, I wasn't offered. So I was, you know, yet again, you know, building $1 million dreams and being paid $200 a week, which is what I did the whole time I was with the Grateful Dead. And I got fed up with it, you know what I mean? So I left.
Yeah.
basically. They didn't want to pay me anymore. They didn't want to, I was supposed to have a third of the company. I never got that, and basically, well, if I was going to be poor, I might as well be poor and follow my own fantasies. So I left and went to India, and I spent nearly 3 years in India, contemplating my own navel and working out what I wanted to be. And what I wanted to be was a writer. That was what I wanted to be. I've always wanted to be. And that's what I do. I just sit around and write.
I love your writing. You have a book out. You can't always get what you want. You write epic Facebook rants that are the best. In my opinion, the only reason to go to Facebook is to see whose pets have died, read your posts, and to wish people happy birthday.
Yeah, man. Well, that's good.
Yeah, man. No, you posted that video of like Good Lovin'. It was like 71 new writers and the dead just bumping around, just dicking around. Yeah. It's amazing. Those little moments, those little windows.
That's right, man.
What a special time.
It was a special time, and lovely people, and of course, lots of those people are dead now, man. And we're all getting old, but nonetheless, it's lovely to. Look back on that, and I've still got dear friends in the family, and all good stuff, man. It's nice to look back on stuff and feel good about it.
Yeah, think of the epic. I mean, that's the thing. We all will remember this forever because people like Bear and Bob Matthews and Betty Cantor Jackson were so diligent at recording everything and in the best possible way so that we can all enjoy it endlessly for the rest of humanity. I mean, this whole era will never die. I mean, Sunshine Daydream, Naked Pole Guy, Festival Express, and watching Janice singing with the band, and Watkins Glen, the biggest concert of all time with the Allman Brothers, and I mean these moments, that the wall of sound. I mean, this is the shit that I learned about as a kid that made me want to play rock and roll for the rest of my life.
Yeah, man. No, listen, but the Grateful Dead. This is one of the things that the Grateful Dead did. Create absolutely memorable moments. This is what we do in life. What people say, can ask themselves, well, what is life? Well, what life is creating things not maybe on a day-to-day basis, but as often as you can and when you can, creating things that turn into the most beautiful memories. That'll do that, for life.
Absolutely. You mentioned, if I could ask a question about Europe 72, which is another one of these epic things that you're talking about with the guy, with David on Shakedown stream, but you said they kind of cut you off, and you're like, oh, I had so many stories about Europe 72. I was hoping I could get maybe a memory from Europe 72 out of you.
Well, I mean, the thing about Europe 72 was that, when I first joined the Grateful Dead, Jerry and I had like rap about what he wanted to do with the band apart from survive. Well, one was he wanted to take the whole band and family to Europe, okay, and I promised I'd get that together. He also wanted to do a really big show that would get us all over the Altamont hump. But, sometime in the next 2 or 3 years when timing was perfect. So I did that. So Europe 72 was part of a promise to him. And he loved it. I mean, everybody loved it. The Grateful Dead loved the idea of being able to play for people that had never seen them before. And where there was definitely no other band in Europe that was anywhere like the Grateful Dead. So, I mean, every show the Grateful Dead did in Europe, people sat there with their mouths open like, they could not believe it,
Yeah.
Well, that was very special. But Jerry, at the end of the tour, we were back in America. Jerry was upset about it, right? Because he didn't play enough. So you can't just drag fucking 52 people around Europe, and play every night. It don't work, you know what I mean? You've got travel and all kinds of other things to do, and you've got to move the equipment and blah, 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 and there's the availability of halls, endless logistical problems. So Jerry wanted to play all the time. I mean, Jerry was, Yeah, he was hot to play, man. He just wanted to play. So he only played on average about once every 3 or 4 nights in Europe. So what we did was he doubled up a lot of the shows just to keep Jerry happy.
Mm.
You know, so we played 2 nights here and 3 nights there and like that, you know. But it was wonderful. The music was wonderful. We recorded it all. And, of course, at the time, that was considered, you know, extremely progressive, if you like, you know what I mean? We recorded everything. And, of course, it turned into, you know, an absolutely seminal album. And if you listen to Europe 72, you know, the albums.
You mean the 78 disc box set?
Yeah. That is.
I have.
Yeah, well, that is a band on top of its shit, man. Don't get no better than that. I mean, I think that
Absolutely.
was the height of the Grateful Dead's creative powers in many ways.
Yeah,
You know?
and don't you think like Texas? Sorry to interrupt, but Texas is such a big part of a lot of those songs. You know, I was thinking about like New Minglewood Blues and El Paso and Me and My Uncle and Deep Ellum Blues. Like Texas is almost a character. You know, it's like Fenario and you know Peggy and all these like folk heroes. Like Texas was almost a character in their mythology.
Definitely. I mean, you know, it appealed to, you know, the Grateful Dead had a very kind of Western ethos. You know, they were California.
Like wild and free. Those are two words that.
And you know, they loved Marty Robbins ballads and shit like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And they loved Tex-Mex music. Doug Sam used to hang out. I mean, I represented Doug for years.
Oh.
Yeah, he was used to hang out with the Grateful Dead
In San Francisco.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Marin County. Doug was loved Doug, you know, he was a fucking wild guy and a great musician. So although, you know, Martin Fierro and people like that, you know, and that whole Tex-Mex thing, you know, was a big musical influence on the Grateful Dead. The Grateful Dead, you know, just loved that feel. And,
Mexicali blues. So Tejano, like polka, you know.
Yeah, man. Hot band, man. And so Texas had this kind of attraction, and it also had this kind of fear because they were freaks, you know, with long hair. And going to Texas was always a bit like going to Florida or New Jersey. It was like, oh my God, we're going to get busted by the cops, you know?
Yeah, you can.
So it was always like that, you know, there's a certain kind of frisson of excitement. Yeah. But I love Texas. I lived in Texas for a few years. I loved Texas. I had a great time.
Well, Texas loves you, Sam Cutler.
Oh, thank you.
So at some point, San Antonio was actually more of a market than Austin, correct?
Well, yeah. I mean, Austin, it took the Grateful Dead. It took the Texas a while to get used to the idea of the Grateful Dead, and that's because a lot of the freaks that were in Texas left Texas and went and lived in New York or in San Francisco. Many of them went to California. You know what I mean, man?
Sure, yeah. I did.
So until a kind of residual, you know, alternative community developed in Texas, it was always. It was always a bit difficult for the Grateful Dead to kind of break through, but they did in the end, of course. And they were in part because of radio. Radio, you know, reached a lot of people. Man. The Grateful Dead wanted to play nice gigs, you know, like in smaller places.
Yeah, there was a 10/15/71 Austin show where that was on an FM broadcast I was reading about. Right. But after y'all got back from Europe, I thought that fall 72 tour was so hot because they dialed in that pretty concise group of songs. They were writing killer material at the time, and they were just really just on fire. And they came to Austin. They had a night off for Thanksgiving, and Doug Sam and friends had a legendary show at the Armadillo World Headquarters.
That's right.
Were you there for that?
Yeah.
And Jerry played pedal steel for the last time for a long time.
Yeah.
And Leon Russell sat in with them for the first time, and only
wonderful, time. Wonderful. I mean, that's it. There's a great cross communication between Texas musicians and California people, you know, And yeah, Doug was a big part of that. He was a great influence on everyone.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was a great band leader.
Yeah, people talk about that show to this day. I mean, there's posters about it all over. I mean, it's a legend.
Yeah.
I have a couple of silly questions. So, I grew up. Our road trip music was like the Grateful Dead. I was wondering what the Grateful Dead listened to while they traveled from place to place. Were they listening to like Coltrane? Were they listening to the Beatles? Were they listening to old country? Were they listening to
a lot of the time
blues?
they listen to their own stuff.
Right, the recordings from the shows.
Yeah, because they listen to the recordings of the shows and in a kind of hypercritical sense.
Yeah.
In order to improve arrangements or strengthen things or to
Makes
drop
sense.
things. Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense.
They were great students of their own stuff, which is why, you can listen to Dark Star over the years and hear it constantly evolving, right? I always love what Miles Davis said about the Grateful Dead. The Grateful Dead are a jazz band that play rock and roll.
Yeah, didn't Miles have to open for the Dead one night and they were like mortified?
Yeah, no, everybody in the Grateful Dead was like exceptionally embarrassed about that.
I bet.
They were all like, oh my God.
That's hilarious. How would they get from town to town? Did they fly in a plane or like their private jet or?
No, never. Not in those days, not in private jet. No, we flew commercial or we drove in rental cars, you know what I mean? Or sometimes I had buses, whatever was the most efficient, effective, and least wearing method of transport. I mean, the whole nature of the beast when you're touring is to deliver musicians to where they've, after all, got to work, in the best possible shape that you can deliver them in.
Yeah.
No point in delivering people to shows, when they're completely like knackered.
Right. Yeah, I heard you talking about that. Like you want them well rested, which was kind of why you scheduled things the way you did.
Yeah.
So that they would have a full tank for every show.
Exactly. And the other thing is, you know what I mean, with somebody like Jerry and Phil, all of them, they all wanted to play. There's nothing wrong, although they sometimes objected to it, there's nothing wrong with keeping musicians hungry so that when they actually do finally get on stage, man, that's what they really, really want. You know what I mean? That's what they want. They want to play.
Yeah, that's what they're on this planet to do.
Yeah, you don't want them getting up on stage like with the kind of headset of, oh, God, not another fucking gig.
Yeah.
The last thing you want them like, yeah, I feel good. You know what I mean? I slept well. Man, I'm ready to play. I've had something to eat. I'm ready.
Yeah.
Let's get on and play.
Could I ask you a question about the crew? Like, it's such a colorful crew, like Ramrod and Steve Parrish and all these characters, like Healy. Like, were they all hanging out together, the band and the crew? It seems like such a family. I really liked it. I wanted to hear about the dynamic there.
Well, I mean, first off, you didn't just walk in and join the crew of the Grateful Dead. You know what I mean? You went through a selection process that wasn't perhaps as severe as becoming a member of the Hells Angels, but you served your time before.
Yeah, they wouldn't kick your ass.
You served your time before you were invited to be a member of the Grateful Dead's crew.
Yeah.
Sure. So there was a special filtering going on, you know what I mean, man? And so we made sure that the people that eventually joined the crew were all very, very special people.
And lifetime members.
Yeah, exactly. You didn't join, when you join the Grateful Dead, you leave when you're dead. You know what I mean?
Life sentence.
Yeah, man. It's like, because you become a part of a group consciousness, don't you? You're part of a family. I mean, to this day, I wear my Grateful Dead ring. I've worn it since 1969,
I love that ring.
I'm proud to do so, It's like, we were all doing something and building something that we wanted to be proud of. Maybe subconsciously, but nonetheless, we did it. We gave everything 100% best shot.
Yeah.
Whether it was the musicians, whether it was the crew, whether it was me, whoever it was total, full on best shot.
Yeah.
And that's That was what it was about, man.
Bear was part of this crew. He was in jail for half your sentence with
He
the
couldn't
dead.
travel was the problem for Bear.
Ah,
Because of his the jail sentence and all that. So that was a problem for him. But yeah, he was the Bear was the Grateful Dead, is the Grateful Dead. I mean, and played as full a role as he possibly could. He drove everyone crazy at times, but we all loved him, and
didn't he kind of finance the dead?
in the early days, he
he's a benefactor.
Yeah, definitely. He had plenty of money from various nefarious activities. So he helped everything along and paid for the equipment and all kinds of stuff. And was, of course, a dear brother, and an amazing man and a visionary. So the Wall of Sound was very much a part of his vision for the Grateful Dead. The Bear, when he first saw the Grateful Dead, thought the Grateful Dead would be bigger than the Beatles, bless him. You know what I mean? And he loved the Beatles. And yeah, he was a very special man. And I mean, I consider him a brother of mine. He got me high many times. And of course, he moved to Australia.
Yeah, I was going to say the other Australian dead fam.
Yeah. Well, he moved to Australia because he did a study. This is typical of the Bear. He did a study of the whole world. And what he was interested in is, where would it be safe to be in the event of a post-nuclear apocalypse?
Yeah.
or like the nuclear winter, as it were, or global warming. And he came up with the Atherton Tablelands, which is about 1,000 miles north of where I live right now.
Ah.
And yeah, he lived here very happily with Sheila and built his own house and all that stuff. And yeah, he's very special.
Yeah, I mean, what a revolutionary guy as far as sound systems, PA systems, recording. I mean, his legacy is, if people don't know Bear, Owsley Stanley, they should definitely study that guy.
I just received this in the post.
Commander Cody.
And it says on it, Bear's Sonic Journals, recorded by Bear, found in the ozone. Commander Cody and his Lost Planet Airmen playing the family dog of the Great Highway when they open for the Grateful Dead, and it's presented by the Owsley Stanley Foundation. Oh. And here it is. So this is what he recorded way back in 70.
Wow.
So that's a long time ago. I just received this from them in America, and so his legacy continues. Now I must admit, I've got a sore throat. So you're not going to
no, you've been more than generous with your time. Thank you so much for chatting with me.
Let's think if we've got any other questions that we need to ask before we.
Yeah. One last question. One of my favorite piano players, Keith Godchow, joined shortly after you did, and he's such a quiet guy, such a shy guy. I was hoping you could tell me a little bit about Keith.
Well, Keith was lovely. He was I loved how he played. I loved his interactions with Jerry. He was very, very special. I mean, he went off the rails there at the end, which was sad. But he was very special. One of my lifelong memories of Keith was he used to play a Model D Steinway, which is this giant 9-foot-long grand piano. That all the great piano players of the world play on in concerts, with the philharmonic orchestras and all that shit. Anyway, everywhere he played, of course, it was a different piano, and often they weren't very well tuned or whatever. So the pianos was a constant problem. And it was decided to sort the piano problem out once and for all, that we get a piano for Keith and we take it on the road.
Like a grand piano, proper, legit, top of the line.
One that took 6 of the biggest fucking Oregon equipment guys you've ever seen to lift up, huge, man. And it came in its own, massive air-conditioned, humidity-controlled case. Oh, it was
spare no expense.
Yeah, dragging that fucking thing around America. We soon got over that, believe me, right?
Yeah.
Keith went back to playing, such pianos as were available. I used to get him Steinway pianos in every gig, but it still had to be moved. And when you move a piano, it goes out of tune. So we had to have a piano tuner on hand more or less all the time. And you know how long the Grateful Dead used to tune up sometimes? That's
every song, 6 minutes.
Well, that's 6 strings on a guitar. I mean, the piano's got fucking 172 strings or something on it, So you can't have one of them being out of tune, anyway.
Right.
Keith was lovely. He was just the quietest, sweetest guy.
Oh, that's great.
Jerry played. I mean, when you listen to the keyboards, man, on the Europe 72 tour, breathtaking.
It is. And no one plays like that. He's so lively and sprightly and just always dancing around everybody, It's all so busy, but they're all on the same path, It's like some woven braid or something. It's amazing.
Like a perfect jazz band.
Yeah. Okay, my last question. Let's end on this. Peak experience with Jerry Garcia. Like, what's a performance where you really, whether high on LSD or sober, were like, Jerry Garcia is a motherfucker on the guitar, and this guy is.
I must admit, every gig I ever did with Jerry, it was like that.
Really?
I'm not kidding you. Sure, man. Well, we always used to get high before the band played. Every gig was amazing.
Every gig?
Every gig.
Is that part of being with Owsley?
Yeah, just part of the whole thing. Every gig was like, a religious experience almost,
Wow.
But I will say this about Jerry. I mean, he and Hunter were both very kind to me. He invited me into his house the day after Altamont, which was the heaviest time, believe me.
I bet.
And protected me, Come in, he said, I'll give you shelter from the storm, Bless him. And, I'm always grateful to him for that. But one of the abiding things I remember about Jerry was watching him when I first moved into that house. He just got his first pedal steel guitar and was basically learning how to play it. And he'd be in this little room, a kind of side room that they had off the living room. And Jerry would sit in this room all day, man, at the pedal steel guitar with a television on in the room without the sound on and headphones on, so you couldn't hear what he was playing, and learning to play. And Nat and girl would take food in there to him, and he'd sit there with the food on top of the fucking guitar and eat it, and then just take the plate off, put it aside, and go back to it.
Workhorse.
He was amazing power of deep concentration. And those are the happy days for me and for him. He'd come out and have a break, every couple of hours, and I'd be available. And we'd go sit in the garden and talk and smoke dope. And I remember one thing, Jerry was very interested in how the Rolling Stones, organised their affairs, their business, their office, all that. He was absolutely gobsmacked when I told him, well, the Rolling Stones actually had like 2.5 people that ran everything. Right, one was the girl that ran the office, one was the girl that ran the fan club and answered the phone, and the other one was the accountant. It was like a part-time accountant, and then of course there was Ian Stewart, who was their equipment guy. That was it. So 3.5 people ran the Rolling Stones, maybe the most famous rock and roll band in the world at that time. And
you said they're the greatest.
About 70 people. So Garcia, he just found that just fuck with his head, something wicked,
Yeah.
But bless him,